We just heard from Rosemary about the uncertainty in groundwater basins here in California and ultimately the need for better characterization of these aquifers moving forward. And SGMA really provides us with a great opportunity to learn more about these resources in order to manage them moving forward. And in fact, and SGMA ultimately requires us to do so. But given the sort of fragmented and voluntary management that has historically been in place here in California, bringing all of these agencies that will be developed under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act up to these common technical standards is going to be a huge undertaking. And so Water in the West has been really focused on trying to understand what these technical challenges are going to be moving forward. And so we've been exploring this via two avenues. The first is through a groundwater data workshop series that we've been hosting at Stanford with the Stanford Law School's Gold Center for Conflict Resolution, as well as with Sacramento State University's Center for Collaborative Policy. And we've really been exploring this in a groundwater data workshop series that we've been hosting, where we've brought together academics, groundwater managers, groundwater consultants, state employees, in particular members of the Sustainable Groundwater Management team with the Department of Water Resources, as well as with the state board, and a variety of NGOs to really try and understand what are the technical challenges that these agencies, both local and state, are likely to face during implementation of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. The other area that we've been exploring, or that we did, is we conducted a groundwater data survey last fall to really try and understand what data are local agencies currently collecting and what are the challenges that they anticipate facing, or what are the data needs that they anticipate moving forward. And so I'm going to present predominantly on the survey results here, just a few key findings from that. But where pertinent, I'm going to pull in a few results from the data workshop series as well. So before I start on that, I just want to say thank you to my co-authors. This work was done with several individuals, Amanda Cravens, who's a postdoctoral student with us, Janet Martinez, who is the director of the Gould Center for Conflict Resolution, and our moderator here today, Leon Sheptitsky. And results from the groundwater data survey can be found in a report we issued in late June of this year, entitled From the Ground Down, which is available on the Water in the West website. So the first finding is that the majority of local agencies, 76% of survey respondents, felt that SGMA would help California move towards sustainable groundwater management. And while this is a very simple finding, it's incredibly important. I know that the majority, or there are many people in this room who helped to craft the legislation and ultimately get it passed. And so this is, really speaks to speaks to how well this legislation was written, and ultimately that they do feel that this is going to be successful. That doesn't mean that it's going to be easy to implement, but it does speak to how well done the legislation was. So the next finding is that local agencies collect a lot of data. 84% of respondents collect well level data. 76% collected water quality data. But about 20% of respondents indicated that these data are often inadequate for decision-making purposes. And so there's really a huge opportunity for us here to make sure that these foundational data sets that are being collected are of high quality and that are ultimately useful moving forward. And so we didn't ask questions in the survey itself about data adequacy. But here's where I'm going to pull in some results from our groundwater data workshop series. So these are some of the issues that we've been talking through in our workshop series. And some of the things that we've heard are, number one, data quality. So issues around dates or missing incorrect sampling protocols where samples would need to be thrown out is sometimes an issue. Another thing is inconsistency in funding, which has ultimately led to inconsistent records, which when you're trying to make decisions, having sort of broken records, broken temporal records can really affect your ability to make good decisions. Again, going back to this fragmented groundwater, the legacy of fragmented groundwater management in California, many people have commented on, I have really great data in my jurisdictional area, but I don't know what's happening that doesn't mean that I know what's going on in the rest of my basin. And so it's really important that we start to collect data at the basin scale, which again is required under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. But this has really hindered people's ability to make decisions about how to manage the resource because they don't have information at the basin scale. And then finally, and a related point, is the ability to share data. So developing standard data protocols, which I'll talk about in just a minute here, is really a huge thing. So not only do these agencies need to be collecting data, but they need to be collecting it in a manner that they can share it across the basin. The third finding, these are responses to the question, and I'm going to read it here just to make sure I get it right. Are there key data or information missing or highly uncertain in your jurisdictional area that interfere with your ability to manage groundwater effectively? And so if you look at the sort of top 4 responses here, we see people are lacking information about groundwater recharge areas as well as groundwater recharge potential. They're having trouble identifying or determining the sustainable yield of their basin. These are really technically challenging data sets to collect, and they're expensive to collect. So in some ways it's not surprising, given sort of the voluntary nature of groundwater management, again, to this point in time, that many agencies are either lacking or have highly uncertain data in these areas. But if you look further down, you look at things like groundwater extraction, groundwater level data, water quality. These are foundational, what I would call foundational data sets. These are data sets that are necessary to just understand what is going on in the basin. And so the fact that we have 22% of respondents indicating that these data are highly uncertain, it really indicates a huge opportunity for us to make sure that we're putting in protocols to make sure that the data that we're collecting are of high quality and are useful. And I should point out that all of the data listed in this graph are either directly or indirectly required in groundwater sustainability plans under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And then the final finding that I wanted to talk about is local agencies need data in a standard and shareable format. So I already alluded to this, but so these are responses to an open-ended question, and the question was, what one improvement related to data collection and or monitoring would make the biggest difference to groundwater management in the jurisdictional area in which you work? So in addition to additional data, which I've already talked about 60% of respondents indicated the need for standardized data protocols and common data sharing platforms. So looking forward, as we think about the requirement under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act to integrate data across the basin scale, we need to really be thinking about what types of data standards are going to be required, the protocols required to support it, and ultimately to be thinking about how to do this beyond the basin scale. In part because when you think about the Central Valley and the hydrologically connected basins there, it's going to require us to share data across basin boundary lines. And the Open and Transparent Water Data Act, which is currently awaiting signature on the governor's desk, really takes a huge step forward in terms of integrating databases to do with water and ecological and water data across the state, and establishing data sharing and data sharing protocols to do that. So this is a huge step forward, and we need to be really thoughtful in how we are developing those protocols, because they'll serve as the basis for many decisions that we're making moving forward. And so I think that, I think we have a huge opportunity to provide, to make significant improvements in the data that we're collecting, but ultimately it's going to need us to develop technical capacity to do that moving forward, as well as building long-term funding and long-term financial capabilities of many of these agencies to be able to support data collection, analysis, and modeling into the future. So I just want to say, so thank you, and thank you very much to our funders who supported us financially for this work, the S.V. Bechtel Jr. Foundation.